August 21, 2014, Basilan Province, Mindanao. At least 9 soldiers were wounded. Soldiers were traveling to secure government projects when their vehicle hit a landmine 9:45 a.m., said Lieutenant Colonel John Paulo Perez, commander of the 18th Infantry Battalion. The attack was said to avenge the loss of several commanders and a number of members in June and July.
In the Philippines, a major Muslim separatist group is limiting its forces' movements to distance itself from fighters from the Abu Sayyaf.
14 Abu Sayyaf bandits and a Marine soldier were killed in a 10-hour clash that lasted until 2 o'clock this morning in Patikul, Sulu.
Ng MNLF ang patay at 3 ang sugatan sa bakbakan sa mga miyembro ng Abu Sayyaf sa Patikul, Sulu. Pinugutan at tinagapa.
Over 100 people were killed when the Abu Sayyaf bombed this ship. But
The Abu Sayyaf has been part of the continuity of resistance in Mindanao. They have been a big part of the Philippine history due to the actions that they have done towards the government and armed forces, especially to innocent civilians. But how much do we know about them? How much do we know what they are fighting for? Today, we will dig into their deep history, their leaders, their agendas, and what does Abu Sayyaf contribute to the Philippine history. The resistance and so-called insurgency of the Moro population in the Philippines rooted from the Spanish occupation. The Spanish-Moro conflict was a series of wars from the Philippine colonization. The fierce fighters of the Moros kept their lands intact by protecting their land, by building forts and strengthening their warfare. They lasted several decades, protecting their sultanates. The Spanish Treaty of Peace with the Sulu Sultanate had allowed Spain to set up a small garrison on Sayyaf Island and in town of Jolo. This sealed the conflict and opened up the Moro land to another colonizer, the USA. After their defeat by the US, the Spaniards turned over the Sayyaf garrison to the Sultan. It was not until May 19, 1899 that the US sent troops to take over the Spanish fort in Jolo. The Americans had not been able to get troops to Jolo sooner because they could not afford to send any troops outside Luzon area. In place of the Spanish treaty, the Bates Treaty included the recognition of US sovereignty over Sulu and its dependencies, mutual respect between the US and the Sultanate of Sulu, Moro autonomy, non-interference with Moro religion, and customs, and a pledge that the US will not sell the island of Jolo or any other island of the Sulu archipelago to any foreign nation without the consent of the Sultan. Mindanao has been under the powers of different colonizers, but they seem not to be the easiest part of the country to take over. Part of the lands are equipped with sultanates and organized armies under these sultanates. This has been the rich history of resistances that the Moro land had been fighting for. The MNLF, or the Moro National Liberation Front, is one of the organizations in Mindanao that has been fighting for the independence of the Muslim Mindanao. The MNLF envisions also the independence of the Muslim Mindanao, but agreed with the Philippine government for the Muslim Mindanao to be autonomous. Hence, the ARMM, or the Autonomous Region of the Muslim Mindanao. The establishment of the ARMM was not favored by then the founder of the Abu Sayyaf group. The Abu Sayyaf organization was founded by Abdurrazzaq Abu Bakr Janjalani on 1989. Abdurrazzaq studied Islamic theology and Arabic in Libya, Syria, and Saudi Arabia during the 1980s. Abdurrazzaq then went to Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet Union and the Afghan government during the Soviet War in Afghanistan in the 1980s. During that period, he is alleged to have met Osama bin Laden and have been given $6 million to establish a more Islamic group with the MNLF in the southern Philippines, made up of members of the extant MNLF. By then, as a political solution in the southern Philippines, ARMM had been established in 1989. Abdurrazzaq was not pleased that they were not given the independence that they have been fighting for, so he decided to gather radical members of the MNLF and created his own group, hence the Abu Sayyaf. The Abu Sayyaf, under the leadership of Abdurrazzaq Abu Bakr Janjalani, envisions an independent Muslim Mindanao and not an autonomous Muslim Mindanao. Abu Sayyaf, meaning bearer of the sword in Arabic, pertains to the militant organization based in the southern Philippines. It seeks a separate Islamic state for the country's Muslim minority. It is designated by the U.S. State Department as a terrorist organization that boasts of ties to Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda network, as well as the Indonesian network of Jemaah Islamiyah. Abdurrazzaq was killed during a gunfight of the ASG with the Philippine National Police in Basilan. The death of Abdurrazzaq was the turning point for the movement to show cracks, and members started behaving more like a gang of well-armed bandits driven by greed, not greed. Since about 2002, however, the extremist group has been reverting to its original separatist goals, and its bombings and assassination attempts have increased accordingly, which was very deviant of the goal that Abu Sayyaf has always said it is fighting for an independent Islamic nation in the southern Philippines. Under the leadership of Gaddafi Janjalani, the Abu Sayyaf group seemed to use violence as their weapon. Gaddafi was the younger brother of Abdurrazzaq. He took over after the tragic death of his brother. Under his leadership, the groups went and became a kidnap for ransom group.
Ilang inosenteng sibilyan na ang dinukot at binihag ng mga bandidong grupong Abu Sayyaf sa Mindanao. February 2, sa isang sulat, hiningi ng Abu Sayyaf ang pagtigil ng lahat ng military operation sa Sulu kapalit ng paglaya ng mga bihag. Pirmado ito ng kanilang mga lider, bagamat hindi kumpirmado ng militar kung tunay ang sulat na ito o hindi. Yung mga tao, March 18, nagbanta ang Abu Sayyaf na pupulutan ng isa sa mga bihag kung hindi ipatutupad ang pull-out ng mga sundalo.
The Abu Sayyaf grew from 650 members to approximately 2,000 members. The group was headed with the extremist Islam ideology of Gaddafi. He was considered as one of the most wanted terrorists, with 1 million on his head after killing 2 American nationals. Now that we have shown this posing problem of the country, we now ask ourselves what the government has done to stabilize the peace process of the Philippines. The Bangsamoro Framework Agreement could be the most successful solution of the government to attain peace. The Framework Agreement outlines the general features of the political settlement between the Philippine government, or the GPH, and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or the MILF. It defines the structure and powers of the Bangsamoro entity that will replace the autonomous region in the Muslim Mindanao, or the ARMM. It also sets the principles, processes, and mechanisms for the transition until the regular election in 2016 for the new Bangsamoro Autonomous Political Entity. the agreement paves the way forward to the just resolution of the historical divide between the government and the Bangsamoro.
The government of the Philippines and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front achieved a historic milestone in the peace negotiations with a signed framework agreement on the Bangsamoro on October 15, 2012. This political document serves as the roadmap for the creation of the Bangsamoro entity that will replace the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao.
Today we sign a framework agreement that can finally seal genuine, lasting peace in Mindanao, in full view of the Filipino people and witnessed even by our friends from different parts of the world. We commit to peace.
Yung framework agreement on the Bangsamoro, dito nilalatag dito lahat ng mga ang pinakalayunin. Ang pinakalayunin natin makamit, of course, ang unang-una na dyan ay yung magkaroon nga ng Bangsamoro, yung isang political entity that will replace the arm and will become the vehicle for yung ina-aspire na self-governance, self-realization.
In lieu with the current status of the Bangsamoro Basic Law, which is a component of the framework agreement, is a reported 3-day delay on the submission of its draft by the MILF panels, since the Malacanang Palace was set to receive it on August 18. The said delay was caused by issues regarding unstated agreements in the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro, which was deemed to be indicated in the draft. However, it had been recently reported last August 21st that the preliminary version of the BBL is already in possession of President Aquino and that the BBL draft is anticipated by the Congress to be legislated by 2015. There is also an existing peace negotiation between the government's panel and the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, and the National Democratic Front's panel since 1986. There are other strategies constructed by the government aside from the framework agreement and the CPP-NPA-NDF peace negotiations, some of which include the 1996 Final Peace Agreement and the collaboration between the Philippine government and the Cordillera People's Liberation Army, or the CPLA. But long before, the government also used the Visiting Forces Agreement to somehow eliminate or control the peace process in Mindanao. Terrorism can be considered as a virus, in which it is also being transmitted, but in a diverse way as such of the disease, which is through persuasion and or brainwashing. Posing the primary characteristic of a virus, it simply implies that even though the main contributor of the said virus is cured, or the brain behind it decides to reconcile with the government, not all of the individuals affected by it would come after the action of their leader. Basically, there is and would always be an unsatisfied person who would oppose to the decisions and the methods conducted by the governing body.